I'm Joe Duffner with DirectLink Technologies. We're very happy to be here today and be part of big data. My company is a technology center and co-location facility. So we house data. We're the brick and mortar for the cloud and for housing IT infrastructure. One of the things that we're really proud of what we do is we are a carrier neutral facility. So we provide cloud on-ramping and low latency, high-speed connections for our customers that are co-located in our facility anywhere in the world. So again, we're happy to be here today and part of this event. And I would like to introduce Susan Paone of Innovation Advising.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I do see a few familiar faces, so you guys, if you know all about healthcare, you might want to just eat your cookies and we'll move on. So, I used to come to Tech Council events a good 20, 25 years ago when everybody was talking about virtual machines and storage, and I was up the street at that little, I don't know what direction, but that little company, UPMC, putting in systems, making stuff work, just living the dream. And I would come to these events. Whoops, looks like we're out. Anyway, I would come to these events and they would be talking, IBM and Oracle, and they would go around the table and everybody would say, well, who's in, what sector? And someone would say, oh, manufacturing, finance, tech, Port Authority, And they'd come to me and I'd say, healthcare. And they'd all go, oh, it wasn't even on anybody's slide, which is interesting because now, it's popular to be in health, right? Everybody's into health data. Suddenly, it amazes me. You go to sleep, you wake up, and suddenly you're popular, So there's a couple of different reasons for that, and this is not the place to talk about why to be popular, but I would like all of you, gentlemen maybe with your pockets, ladies with your handbags, to participate for a moment. Who has a $5 bill? Please. And if you can show a $5 bill, Joe is going to give you a $1 bill. So it pays to, pay attention and participate, right? No strings attached, Okay. So what's this all about? And again, by the year 2025, my friends, for every $5 bill in your pocket, in your bank account, in your kid's bank account, in your kids' pockets, being spent, every dollar has something to do with health and healthcare. That's the rate that we are spending. That's not necessarily a great thing, but that's a reality. I think that has something to do with why, health and health data suddenly has become so popular, maybe. If you're good at spending money, you ought to be in healthcare, right? That's what it's all about. So keep that in mind. Of every $5, $1 in the US economy is tracking by 2025 to have something to do with health, health services, or health care. That's a big number. Now, in addition, we like health data, right? So consumers have changed. People are aging. Younger consumers coming into the world are more engaged. Systems, in theory, are more open, except in healthcare, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But, we're doing things. We're on our mobile platforms. We're using our portals. We are engaging, and we are finally starting to look at some of this data. And we are actually starting to begin to talk to providers and talk to some of the people that have been collecting this data. So, the tide has shifted from health care and health services, from being this sort of in the closet collector of transactional data sector to a sector of the economy that suddenly people want to get at. People want to get the data, they want to understand the data, and I hope they want to solve some problems because, I come from an industry with big, big problems, okay? So again, take a look at your leisure. This is a very current slide from Accenture. They did a number of studies, and I just put one up here in the interest of short time. And you can see, all of the things that people are doing before they hit a doctor. Smart scales, websites, social media, patients like me. How many of you use a portal of some sort, a patient engagement type device? Okay, good, right? Case proven. So, what do you do in 15 minutes to talk about healthcare data? That was my conundrum in coming here today, other than giving out money. which was, that's easy to think about. I wanted to talk about what I'm calling some idiosyncrasies. So I am excited, having implemented health systems and supported them for 25 years, I am more excited than anybody that the data may now be actually available, valuable, utilized to improve the outcomes and certainly try to reduce that dollar maybe down to 50 cents, okay? So more excited than anybody. What I'd like to talk about and caution some of you, especially some of you that work in the technology field and are starting to work with health data, are what I call some of the idiosyncrasies. It's not so much bad or good, just different. What are some of the differences that we see with health data? And the first thing I want to talk about is the level of subjectivity. The level of subjectivity. A debit is not a debit and a credit is not a credit. And if you've worked in the healthcare field, you know what I'm talking about. For example, we have these fabulous systems called electronic health records that have now been being implemented for 20 plus years, cost a lot of money. You've all been to the doctor, you've all had the back turned on you while the doctor's typing somehow awkwardly into the computer or talking to it or whatever. And we get that, we like that. We like to see data collected. Do you know it is still entirely arbitrary as to what goes in what part of that record and when? For example, if I'm a primary care physician, most likely the problem list, which is one of the backbones of that electronic record, nice structured data, we love structured data, right? We want to get our hands on structured data. If I'm a primary care physician, chances are I put everything on that problem list. Everything that's ever happened to you, whatever's happening to you right now, whatever happens to you tomorrow goes on the problem list. And I keep it up diligently. If I'm a specialist, it's probably a different story. Well, maybe, I don't know. Some specialists keep up a problem list. Other specialists have a view that, I'm an ophthalmologist. I want to look at what's going on with the eyeballs. Oh, and by the way, if you have diabetes, that does matter. So that does go on the problem list. So the point is, there's a lot of subjectivity in the way these tools are used. So when I sit in forums and I hear people say things like, oh, we're mining data from the electronic health record and we're using the problem list, I immediately flash back to all this craziness and think, boy, I hope you've got somebody in a room to educate you as to how that problem list was being used. Source data systems. Source data systems. Subjectivity. I'll give you another example of subjectivity. Got a call one year, won't name names. We're doing all kind of data mining and we're running after our insurance health plan members to put them on management protocols, right? If you have something going on a chronic basis, we want to put you on a protocol so we can improve it. We're calling people and we're saying we're putting you on an asthma protocol, how to manage your asthma better. It's a good thing, right? Lots of money going into that, big data application. Patients are furious. Calling these doctor's offices, I don't have asthma. I don't have asthma. Stop bugging me. Stop threatening me with my $500 deductible. Stop, 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 stop. What's going on? Well, gee, we were working from claims data. Anybody know what claims data is? Some hands, right? Insurance data, right? The bill. We're working from claims data and we mined the pharmaceutical data from the claims data. So we start calling people on Singular and telling them they need to be on an asthma management protocol. Well, we didn't know that a year and a half ago, doctors started putting people with allergies, like me, on Singular. I don't have asthma, I have allergies. Bad data? No, just the wrong interpretation of the data. The worst case scenario are the antipsychotics that physicians put people on without mental illness for chronic pain management. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I had to learn that. So again, where does the data come from? The subjectivity, the context is so very important. The other element are proprietary systems. I think a couple of you might have been in the lunchroom when I was asking the gentleman from Zoll what his thought was about the information blocking legislation that's coming out shortly, supposedly, in the fall. Healthcare systems, and I realize there are proprietary systems everywhere. Healthcare systems could win the Hall of Fame award for proprietary systems. And some of you are shaking your heads. Craziness, craziness. There's legislation moving, hopefully, to try to move that along. I certainly wrote enough purchase orders in my day for dollars and cents on interfaces that would curl people's hair. You know, the amount of time spent patching these systems together. My point is, when you are out there and you are going to these source systems and extracting and doing your ETLs and doing your data cleansing, know where the data came from. One bad admitting doctor is going to flow to 13 other systems in a typical health environment. And there may not even be a map of where it goes because some of those interfaces are so old, so poorly documented, that you don't have any idea. Self-reported data from consumers. I love consumer engagement. I spent 10 years of my career launching the eHealth stuff at that little place up the street. Love it, believe in it. Interesting, now we have consumers' perceptions of health data meeting health systems' perceptions of health data. So again, subjectivity. My doctor may take that drug that I write into my portal and say, hey, I went up the street to Butler Hospital, Dr. So-and-so put me on XYZ. I'd like it to be part of my health record over here at Cleveland Clinic. Let's get out of Pittsburgh, okay? Right? Someone at Cleveland Clinic may add that to my meds list. They may not. There's not a lot of standardization. There's not a lot of protocols, okay? So again, you know, self-reported data is not a bad thing. For the most part, consumer engagement has been a good thing in the industry. It's just, it's very important to understand where the data is coming from and the source of the data. What's the other issue with self-reported data? How much do you think I report that I weigh back when you had to put that on your driver's license? 110 pounds every year. Haven't seen that for a long time. You got the point. All right. So the last sort of problem I want to wrap up with before I move on to a few recommendations, because I'm just painting problem after problem, is this idea of knowledge workers. Knowledge workers. You will find dedicated, smart, super smart people generally that work in the health field. I mean, think about it. Think about the credentials. You have to get a doctorate to be a pharmacist. You have to go to medical school to be a physician. You have to go through heck and back every day to be a nurse, okay? You know, these are smart people. But the interesting thing about the industry is despite the fact that we put all these systems in to bill, mind you, that's their dirty little secret, to bill, most of the clinical knowledge, most of the process knowledge is walking around in the heads of the people in the industry still. Which leads me to my prescription. I love technology as much as the next person. I was a biochemist by training. I got into systems by doing it. I love tech. I get as excited as the next person about tech. I would like to propose that if you are working in healthcare, if you are working towards source systems, extracting data, mining data, big data, solving problems, which needs to be done, please think about a phase 0.0. And what I mean by 0.0 is let's talk about something not technical. How many of you do and think about stakeholder analysis? Okay. You have to go look it up. I don't have time to tell you what it is if you didn't raise your hand. And I'm not being terse, I'm being serious. This is an industry where you can't just talk to IT. I like IT. I used to run IT. I don't have anything against IT people. I wouldn't say that here if I did, right? Why would I say that? But my point is, those issues that I talked to you about in the prior slide, you know, pulling Singular from the claims database and sending it to people about asthma, that could have been resolved if one clinician were in the room during the design phase of that big data project. One clinician would have looked at that and said, guys, we have to do a little bit of data validation stuff here. We can't just assume, okay? So get access to stakeholders. Don't be foolish enough to start a big data project, get your, databases all wound up without knowing who's in the room, and find them. Doctors like to participate. You may have to get up early. You may have to stay up very late. You may have to be very creative in the way you engage them, but they're smart people and they like to participate. But these are not the kind of projects that you can do IT to IT. I think I've given you some examples. What is it? What is the origin of the data that you're talking about? If you're working with claims data, that's fine. Understand that it's claims data. In claims data, almost everybody is coded with CHF. I am a registered health information administrator professional. I know what that means. You don't need to know what that means. I know what that means. That's a billing function. It doesn't mean everybody has congestive heart failure clinically. It means they have some level of heart failure. Once again, wasn't a portal launched by a large health plan in the region with claims data telling everybody that they had CHF? And weren't those phones ringing in the doctor's office? Bad data. See what I'm saying? Not the data, bad design to a project, right? I would have picked that up. I'm an HIM person. I know how that coding stuff works. Okay? Involvement. Where's your data coming from? What's expected? And lastly, and I think this is just good principle for any data project, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? When I see some of this data work now in healthcare, I truly see people trying to solve world hunger. And I understand that because healthcare is very broken, very, very broken. I wouldn't be standing here if I didn't think it could be fixed. And I am excited about the idea to be able to have talented people, frankly, outside of healthcare, get their hands on the data and start to bring some new practice. Point is, start small, engage those knowledge workers, engage those stakeholders, build a phase 0.0 before you jump into your technology design. And I guarantee you, you will be more successful in working in healthcare data, and you'll make more than $1. Thank you. I think do we have time for just a couple questions? Okay. Okay. Any questions, thoughts? Yes.
Question, and I might not know what I'm talking about here, so Apple just signed a contract with some 20-some medical centers
Yes.
to put the data from the medical center onto your personal device.
Yes.
Basically, data ownership.
Correct.
Any thoughts? Because to me, that's a great way to check the data. Who's got more interest?
It is. It is. And I'm a firm believer. And again, I mean, I was correcting people at UPMC using the word patient 20 years ago and replacing it with the word consumer and told about it, So, I mean, my allegiance is to get the data in front of us. It's our data. And that is fantastic. And that, by the way, will push this ruling coming from the Center for Medicaid and Medicare about information blocking, because that's exactly what the federal government is tired of, are proprietary systems that won't share data and make something like that easy. Some of the vendors have written APIs. Epic's a good example. They wrote an Apple API about 10 years ago or something. So, it's there. It's still clunky. It's difficult. But it's a very good observation and a good point. And the whole reason that the information blocking legislation has sort of hit the point, Google information blocking healthcare, you can find out everything you want to know about it. The bottom line is there are $1 million fines that the feds are going to be starting to levy on those that they want to make an example of who are blocking the flow of information. And that's a good example of, high visibility. You can't block this stuff anymore. And I'll tell you what, most clinicians that I've worked with agree. Get the data in front of the consumers. They will tell you, I haven't been on that drug for 10 years. I don't know why it's on my list. So good question, good observation. Anyone else? Yes?
Is the downside risk to that scenario, though, that if I have all my health data on my phone, I could do an end around to the traditional healthcare system, go to Hulu, I could go to YouTube or whatever, give anyone my information that I wouldn't have access
Absolutely.
to otherwise, and then start
And that was the number one, and I don't mean to cut you off, I know I'm on a clock here. That was the number one issue at my professional meeting last week. I had to go to my national meeting for HIT, credentialing, blah, blah. And the number one concern is, okay, so you give the consumer their data, the lawyers, make you sign your life away. Now what happens? I mean, you could have the security discussion, you could have the competitive discussion. At the end of the day, it's going to happen, right? So it's a matter of sort of letting a market play out. I mean, you will see people in the industry fall into different factions. Healthcare is still very paternalistic, guys. It's still a very paternalistic industry, right? I mean, lots of people go into taking care of people because they want to take care of you, So there's this sort of antithetical social movement around, you can trust me. I'll tell you what, I supported a very high volume patient portal and patient engagement system, up the road. And I can tell you, people do just fine. They learn about their data, just like they learned about how to bank online, just like they learned, how to operate their sophisticated cars. Yes, there are a few tragedies here and there, and I don't mean medical tragedies, I mean data issues. But for the most part, we're adults and we own it. And guess what the literature says? As you age and as you get sicker, you get more engaged and you figure it out. I mean, I did a dissertation on that. It sounds oversimple, and men figure it out later, by the way, ladies. Women figure it out earlier. I think it has to do with the way women engage with the health system, but we won't talk about that. But the point is, it's an inevitability. My point in this is simply to say that the data can be very messy, and the answer is not that hard. Engage, engage, engage. Reach out to those stakeholders, the clinicians, therapists, risk management people. Get people in the room that maybe you wouldn't have in the room when you're working in some other sectors where the data might be just a little cleaner. I'm not suggesting that you can't do it. I'm saying you've just got to get it's kind of at the village stage. I hope I addressed your question. I feel like I sort of didn't, but we can talk after as well. And I'm happy to talk with anyone after, and thank you for your time. I promised I would keep to time.